Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of our podcast, Cyber Diaries. This is a podcast that is started by the students for the students. We, as a cybersecurity club at New York Tech, bring you this very new opportunity to get to connect to various individuals and professionals from our industry. I am Hani, and I'll be your host today for this podcast. And today we have our very special first guest, Dr. Tokunbo Makanju, the Associate Dean of New York Tech, Vancouver. Please, Professor.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I guess this is the point where I say, hello, mom, I'm on TV or something like that. So anyway, that beside the point. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. Very happy to be here. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. So let's get started then with our podcast and with a very brief introduction about yourself and your professional introduction.
Okay, so you've already mentioned my name. My name is Tokunbo Makanju. You can see I took a little bit of time there to pronounce it correctly. Tokunbo Makanju. All right, so I'm the associate dean at Vancouver campus of New York Institute of Technology. I manage the cybersecurity program, the Masters in Cybersecurity program, and I've been doing that now for about 5 years. My journey to get here has been quite. I've had different stints working in different places over the years. Actually, this is actually my first job as an academic. Prior to that, I always done work in industry. So my first job after I graduated because my bachelor's degree is in computer science. So I finished, I got my first job, was working with an oil and gas company called Nexen Inc. It's a Canadian company. I worked with them for about 5 years before going on to graduate school. I went on to Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I did my master's and my PhD there. And after I finished from Dalhousie, I started a startup of my own. I did a startup of my own. The company was called Toplog. And the company went on for about 3-4 years, even though I was not with them for that entire period of time. I was only with the company for about 3 years. And after that, I moved to Toronto. And when I was in Toronto, I worked with a consortium called the Center of Innovation, Information Visualization, and Data-Driven Design. So it was a consortium of about 5 Ontario-based universities and about 9 industry partners working on doing different kinds of research. And I worked there, when I was there, I worked with IBM. IBM was one of the companies that was part of CVDD. That was the short for that consortium. It was called CVDD. That's CIV triple D. CIV triple D. CIV triple D. Center for Innovation in Information Visualization and Data-Driven Design. All right. So I was with them and I worked with them for about 2 years. Later on, CVDD morphed into something that was now called the Brain Alliance. But then I worked with a company called KDDI. So KDDI is the second largest telecommunications company in Japan. All right, second largest telecommunications company in Japan. So I worked with their research arm, not with the company itself. They have a wholly owned subsidiary that does research. All right,
so like an R&D.
Like an R&D subsidiary of KDDI. So I worked with them for 2 years. I worked with the cybersecurity group there. Right, with the cybersecurity group there. And from there, from KDDI, I came back to Canada in 2018 and joined NYT, and I'm here now, basically. So that's my work history. Yeah, that covers about 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
a long time.
quite a spectacular journey for anyone to be a part of. And not to mention, this is one of the things that I noticed is that you had your feet dipped in a vast. I mean, you have your hands put into various aspects of essentially what I would say is the computer science industry, and not just the cybersecurity industry. I mean,
it's true.
So you're also a co-founder, you have entrepreneurship experience, and not to mention you have tons of real-world industry experience.
Yes.
So one of the things that I picked up from that, and is what I'd like to your next question to be from is, so at what point in your professional, I would say, experience in the real world did you feel a pull towards the cybersecurity industry?
Yeah, so like I said, my first degree was in computer science. I always thought that I was going to be a developer. That's where that was
I can
where,
relate with that.
yeah, exactly, that's what I wanted to do. But then, like I said, my first job after I graduated was I got a job as a system administrator, if you want to put it that way. My job title was information technology analyst, but basically it was network and system administration, basically, right?
Oh.
And it was a very, very interesting job. Like I said, I worked with a company called Nexin Inc. That was
Yes.
what it was called. And the company is no longer in existence. It's been bought over now. It was Calgary. It was based in Calgary. Their headquarters is in Calgary, Alberta.
I see.
In 2012, that was after I left them anyway. In 2012, they were bought over by Chinook, which is a Chinese national offshore oil company or something like that. It's based in Hong Kong. So
I
they were
see.
bought over by that. And by 2018, they were completely subsumed into Chinook. So the Nexon does not exist anymore, unfortunately, as an entity. All right, even though they're still there in, with their headquarters in
Exactly.
Calgary,
I
under the name of
hear
that
that
new
name a
company.
lot,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. So while I worked there, so what I'm talking about now, getting a job with Nexon was sometime like 1999, about 1999, 2000. That was a long time ago. So
That was long.
yeah, so at that time, the current state of cybersecurity as we know it did not exist. I mean, the internet was just starting to
It was
really
still in
blossom.
infancy,
Exactly,
exactly.
it was trying to blossom at that time, but security was still a thing. So as a system administrator that I was then, system and network administrator that I was then, basically cybersecurity was part of my job description, right? There was no one in the company that was, that had the job of doing security as, as a single thing. Yeah, as a dedicated person.
position.
So
Exactly.
basically those of us who are doing the daily network administration, basically it was part of our duty to do that.
Exactly.
So when I finally did decide to go on to grad school, all right, it was a very, very natural thing, a natural progression for me because I had interest in, what we call data science now, but it wasn't called data science then, right? We still call it, we had other terms for calling it then, things like soft computing, that's what people called it, soft computing, things like that. So I had an intro, or maybe AI, or, those are the terms we use then. Data science is a relatively new term.
It wasn't exactly.
Yeah, but that was what it was anyway. All right, so I had interest in that, so it was very, very natural for me that, when I came to grad school and I was basically studying data science, I had the passion to apply data science, all right, to cybersecurity. So that's what I did for, my research. And I found at Dalhousie University, I found a supervisor who was just perfect, who did exactly that. So I worked with that person for my grad school, my master's and PhD. And that's basically how I got into cybersecurity. That's where I started.
That's quite, again, another interesting journey because from what I understand, you were part of the very early set of people who essentially, I would say, pioneered, and the early 2000s, I would say, people did not have
dedicated
access
roles.
to computers.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there were no dedicated
Smartphones
roles.
and
Yeah,
systems were, how would you say, a luxury rather than a commodity.
and I think I can still remember, like, the first global story regarding cybersecurity. There was this it was some guy, I can't remember, I think it was Indonesia or Malaysia, some guy who wrote a virus called I Love You. I remember, that's a very old story. Like, I think it happened in 2001 or so. It was a very, very simple program he wrote. And he wrote the program and, and he wrote it using VB script. It was a simple program using VB, and basically what that thing did was that he put it out on the internet and it could go to people's mailboxes. It will read up find out who is on your address book and send the same message to all those people, and then basically it just went around the world. So that was the first big incident I can remember that we ever had that basically decided to bring cybersecurity to the forefront. And people were realizing that, look, with all this interconnectivity of devices, we are really in trouble if we don't really we don't pay attention to what people can actually do with these things, right?
Back then, everything was trusted by default.
Exactly, by default. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's now starting to change now, but that's true.
Yeah, and the email will tell you I love you while it's basically doing all that. That's why it was called you I love you bug.
So, yeah. That's quite a smart way to figure it out.
Yeah.
But going on to the next part, you are also someone that comes from a non-cybersecurity background and who made their way into the cybersecurity industry at the moment.
Yeah.
So you have that experience and that insight of what it needs or what a person needs to have if they're coming from a non-cybersecurity background.
Mhm.
And if we are talking about big majority of students that come to New York Tech who are doing cybersecurity, I can say that there's at least more than half who do not have adequate, I would say adequate, I won't say nothing, I would say adequate prior experience in cybersecurity.
Mhm.
So what advice would you give to them? Because those are the people who are fresh and sometimes they have experience but
Mhm.
not necessarily in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So what skill sets or what pieces of advice would you give to them when they have joined?
Okay, so the first problem there is that it's even though some with certain roles, right, in industry, right, it's very clear that you're doing cybersecurity,
That's true.
right? But then who is a cybersecurity professional is a very, very difficult thing to narrow down.
I see. That's
All
interesting.
right, because I gave an example, right? If I am doing software quality assurance, all right, that is my job title, and I am doing security testing on
I
software.
see.
Am I a cybersecurity professional or not? Yes, you are in a
Yes, you
sense,
are,
because
yeah.
you are supporting,
Yeah,
the
because
whole cybersecurity, ecosystem in some way or the
that
other,
works
right?
in compliance.
Exactly, right? So yeah, so it's very, very difficult, right, to narrow down who exactly is a cybersecurity professional. So I basically think that any skill in computer science is important, all right?
Somehow
Yeah,
contributing towards
contributing towards
cybersecurity.
your cybersecurity will depend.
That's good.
Depending on where you end up, you basically need to be prepared to basically do any of those things. So I have a lot of people who think that, oh, I'm a cybersecurity professional, I should not need to know how to code. That's why our program is set up the way it is. All right, we expect everyone, because we're not a vocational college, right? So we cannot train you for a specific role. All right, we are preparing you to basically work in any role. All right,
That's good.
so we expect everyone who comes into the program to have a background in computer science to start with. All right, because any role that you step into, you might require skills that you think are not necessary, right, but are necessary for that role. Like I gave you the software quality assurance role I talked about. All right, so that's the first step. That's the first thing, having that typical background in computer science. And then when it comes to cybersecurity in terms of what different roles that people do, I think ISC squared has done a very good job with their CBK, a common body of knowledge, right? Having those 8 different tracks, right? 8 different domains, basically, that you can actually go into in cybersecurity. So, and if you look carefully, right, at those 8 different domains in ISC squared CBK, if you look at our courses, right, in our program, you basically see that you can actually do a one-to-one mapping. We cover everything, right, on all of those 8 domains. We have a course, at least one course that covers at least part of each one of those domains. So you have the basic background, basically, and that's the first thing, right? So anyone who comes here, basically, we guarantee you that by the time you graduate, you have the basic knowledge and background in any area in cybersecurity that you want to go into. So if you don't have any experience, what I would basically say is that when you get out there, do not be too picky, because the people have ideas about what role they want to play in cybersecurity. Like, I have a lot of people who want to be, like, I think the one I hear all the time is that I want to be a penetration tester. You want to be on the red team. And the truth is, there are not that many. Blue team roles are perhaps more pervasive. Like, red team roles are not that many. All right, so you need to be a little bit realistic, in terms of what you want, and then to not be afraid, all right, to start I'm not saying start like I did, but as a developer to start with, all you get as a role is that's a generalist role, or a generalist role as a network administrator. Do not be afraid to go in there and basically cut your teeth there, and then after a while, all right, try to move either laterally within the same company that you're in, or go to another company to basically move to the position you actually want in cybersecurity. So not be afraid to do that. I have, with all my years being here at NYT, I've had a lot of students who have graduated from the program, and who still keep in touch with me, telling me about what has happened to them. And I'm always very, very happy to see that people are making progress, and I see people who started out small and slowly build up themselves. Like, I give an example of a student. The student story goes back, I believe she graduated sometime maybe in 2020. About she finished with this program sometime in 2020. She had no background in cybersecurity.
Was she
And
computer science?
I think she had a computer science background, though. All right. So when she finished from here, her first job, was as basically a customer service agent with Best Buy. Okay.
Okay.
And that's where she started, right? She got a job as a customer because of it. She knows computers. She can maybe advise people on what they want to buy. And, somebody might look at that and say, oh, you start there. But that's where she started. That was her first job. And within a year of doing that, she moved in within Best Buy. She moved into a role as an end user specialist in the main headquarters of the company. So she moved from there and moved into a more, and now recently, which is basically sometime just in February, she reached out to me again, all right, basically asking me for a reference because she was moving to UBC into a security role, a security analyst role. And that's within 3 years of finishing from here. All right. So it's a gradual process. Do not be afraid to start out small. I have evidence, right, from my interaction with other students of, evidence about what, the fact that, you can start out small and slowly build your way. And this happened all within 3 years.
That is quite perfect because as you said before, that having different skill sets, you never know which skill set
might require for the first job you're going to get.
Every skill set does contribute towards cybersecurity.
Exactly.
And like you said, it's a journey. It's not a race that you have to finish as soon as you graduate.
Exactly.
So that actually makes sense. So what I would also say is that so the advice that you gave applies universally, not just to students who have, let's say, ample background or ample experience, but even to those who are freshers right out of college.
Yes.
Like if they've just graduated,
exactly,
just fresh undergraduates, your advice still holds. You have essentially told that the field, it looks daunting at first, but the skill sets that we have, no matter what they are and how varied they are, they're still as useful as anybody else's in the cybersecurity field.
Exactly.
That's interesting. So the next thing that I would like to ask you is, let's say that the students who pass out, they usually are, like I said, in a hurry. They want to find a proper job. And sometimes what they are a lot more, I would say, held back, or let's say they feel daunted by, is the fact that companies demand a lot of skill sets. So, and sometimes people who have ample experience in the background are able to cross that hurdle pretty quickly. But so what advice would you give to the complete freshers in terms of just for the job application part? Because that is the one thing that they focus a lot on.
So when you mean complete freshers, I mean somebody graduating out of this program that are finishing.
So there are a lot of students and a lot of demographic students that I have met so far that they completed the the undergraduate in computer science, and then immediately came to NYT. And what they did,
New York Tech,
and what they did was they immediately finished this, and now they're looking for a job. So they don't have any work experience, let's say back in their home country or here. So usually what happens is employers tend to pass them off. So what advice would you give to them to try and close that gap?
Yes. Unfortunately, there is really no way to bypass that requirement from most employers, which is, I think, is a sad thing in terms of the way most employers employ people in technology, right? Everyone wants someone with experience. Someone is willing to take the time to train people. And I think that's really sad. I think something needs to be done about it. That's probably another reason why we have this gap, right? People say, oh, we have 10,000 roles that we're trying to fill. Meanwhile, we are churning out graduates all the time and you don't employ them, right? If you took your time to employ some of these people and let them grow, they'll probably be able to fit that role. But everybody wants someone with experience, which is sad.
Exactly.
But but I can't change that. If I could change it, I would change that, right? Because I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong. It's not the best practice, I think. But so knowing that is what they're looking for, all right? My advice, obviously, will be to students who are in that position to try to ensure, right, that by the time they graduate, that they do have some kind of experience, either through doing an internship, through volunteering, or making connections with people, right? Because that always sets you aside too, right? Because if you go out, out there, you meet people, right? Because references count for a lot, right? References, especially here in Canada. The practice here, references count for a lot. People do not take references lightly here. And that's one of the reasons why sometimes you have people who come to Canada as new immigrants and then, they have 20 years of experience from their home country, they cannot find work. It's not because you're not competent, right? But there's no one to verify it, all right? So if you have that 1 year of experience in Canada, right now the employer knows that there's someone in Canada they can reach out to verify your work experience, and I think that counts for a lot. So my advice to students basically is to try to get some of that onto their resume before they graduate, either, like I said, either through an internship or through networking.
I see.
Or through doing project industry-led project-based work and things like that, right? Or volunteering too. Volunteering too is another.
Like the example you gave of the master's student
Yeah,
who
exactly.
started at Best Buy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was, although that job was not something that was within the exact domain of
Yeah,
cybersecurity,
exactly.
but it led to her landing a job in cybersecurity.
Security in Best Buy.
In
right?
Best Buy,
Because they
exactly.
obviously and that's it, but she was overqualified for what she was doing,
Yep.
right? But being there in Best Buy, now they know her, they know her work ethic,
Exactly.
everybody knows who she is, and she was even able to get a proper role, all right, that fits her qualifications, and then now she's moving on to a security analyst position. So yeah,
That's good.
right.
That's good. Well, that pretty much wraps up the session for our Cyber Diaries podcast, the first episode. And it was essentially a very informative talk
Thank
where
you.
we got to learn a lot about our dean, who you will also be meeting in classes, cryptography. And we got to learn about the professor's cybersecurity experience, about various job experiences he's had, and obviously he has mentored and personally seen, I would say, hundreds, if not thousands of students pass out in front of him. So he is someone who has experience within the cybersecurity trends and has provided us with his wisdom to help us better go ahead with the industry. So before we close up,
Okay.
we have a fun little thing. So we have planned for Professor what is called as the rapid fire round. So for this, what we'll have is, I'd say, some questions.
Do I win anything?
No. You will win our place in our Hall of Fame.
Okay.
So I'll ask you questions.
Okay.
And you will have roughly 3 seconds to answer them.
Okay.
If you answer them correct, there's no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
But if you answer them within the 3 seconds,
Okay.
you win a point.
Okay.
So without much further ado, let's get started.
All right.
Right. So the first question
Mhm.
is, what is your favorite go-to dish during chilly winters?
Chicken soup.
Chicken soup.
Okay.
That's good. What would you prefer? A
Uh-huh.
beach vacation or a mountain getaway?
Mountain getaway.
Mountain getaway?
Yeah. I'm a very, I like walking. I like sightseeing.
Hiking?
Yeah, hiking, sightseeing. I
That's
like seeing things. So sitting out on the beach doesn't cut it for me. I like to go out. So
That's
mountain
good.
getaway.
What would you say you are? A cat person or a dog person?
Yeah, a dog person.
person?
Cats are not loyal to me.
I see. I see. Which phone would you prefer? An Android or an iOS?
None of the above.
None of the above?
Yeah. That's just a joke. Android maybe.
Android.
Right. I think iOS is overhyped.
Overhyped?
Yeah.
That's good. We are on the same train then.
Yeah.
And what do you prefer when working? A light theme or the dark theme?
It depends.
It depends?
It depends.
So you like light theme?
I like light themes. I like dark themes. All depends on my mood. Like,
see.
my mood or what I'm doing. Yeah.
Okay. And how would you pronounce the word GIF?
I don't pronounce it. I just say GIF.
Okay. That is going away from the question. But I see Professor is maintaining a neutral ground. He doesn't want anybody coming after him. Okay. The next question. Do you think pineapple is acceptable as a pizza topping?
If you're in Hawaii, yes.
If you're in Hawaii?
Yes.
What about in Italy?
In Italy, no. Obviously, no. If you're in Hawaii, yes, it's acceptable topping in Hawaii, but not in Italy, yes. Yeah.
I see. And let's say you're tired. What would you prefer? Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Tea? So you're not a caffeine person
No,
because people
no.
usually,
No.
they're like software developers and people in cyber.
Yeah, I think
Computer
that's one of
industry.
those things that I just never got into. Like, I remember when I was a grad student, like, everyone else in the lab, when we're working in the lab, we work late nights and things. Everyone else is getting coffee. And somehow I just never really needed it. I don't know why. So it's just me. I don't really need coffee.
And the last question, how many languages can you introduce yourself in?
5.
5? Could you name them off?
I can introduce myself in English, in French, in Spanish, in Japanese,
Mhm.
and 2 Nigerian languages, Yoruba and Hausa.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, since you have traveled
I think
across the world.
that's actually 6 languages, I think.
Yeah, that is
That's
six, exactly.
not
That's what
5.
I was thinking. Like it's
Yeah.
not 5, 6. But that's very, very helpful because you have traveled around the world and you have a lot of exposure to various different cultures and
Yeah.
languages. So that's good. So looks like you got all of the questions, right? I
Okay.
think that was 10 questions. So you have now earned a place in our Hall of Fame.
Hey.
And I mean, a bonus question.
Okay.
Do we know the questions for the next cryptography exam?
I plead the Fifth Amendment on that one.
I see. So at least, well, I tried. I tried my best. Well, we are now truly towards the end of our podcast. We had a wonderful session with our professor.
Thank you for having me.
Our dean helped us a lot in providing us experiences, and we got to know him today on a bit more friendly level, other than what you see in class, because that's usually the official professor. But yeah, and that brings our session to a close. So if you like the session, please let us know in the comments. Let us know that if this session you wanted any more questions to be asked, and let us know if you want someone to be seen in this podcast, and we can invite them and help you up with more information. That was Cyber Diaries' first episode, and we'll be seeing you again.
Thank you.